What's up, Lego builders? Welcome back to Coconut Brick Studios. This week, I am building one of the centerpieces of this entire mock project, the Imperial Juggernaut. There are a couple of options to choose from, and there's one in particular most people have been requesting, but it's got some problems we need to talk about. I also got a great idea from some of you guys on how to take the terrain from looking like a Minecraft dirt patch to a realistic muddy battlefield. So if you're ready for some more building and a mediocre puke joke, don't forget to execute order 66 on that like button, and let's get started.
So far, my favorite part of the series has been building the terrain. I've never attempted a large-scale outdoor build that incorporated a lot of natural ground. I've done cities in fairly non-urban environments, but the groundwork was always the same approach of a flat row of plate and tile. But on Mimban, I really get to explore and build dynamic shifting terrain that most importantly isn't just another gray slab. I've had some people suggest using reddish-brown tile to create smoother, almost slippery-looking ground like a patch of mud or wet ground, which, if this scene tells us anything, is pretty common on this ball of dirt. So I decided to experiment with tile on a couple of patches of terrain. I started by outlining some small mounds with brick, then filled in the gaps with plate. After that, I went over the terrain and just added a bunch of tile and slopes, trying to smooth it out and cover as many studs as I could. This seemed to be working pretty well, so I moved over to the wreckage of the ATDT and connected that bit to the abandoned trench. This approach definitely uses up more pieces, but creates a much more realistic finished result with a lot more texture on the terrain. I'm going to scatter a few pieces of the ATDT half buried in the dirt like they were pulled off and discarded as the walker was being stripped for parts. I want to capitalize on how much designing I did last week and build even more of the base. I now know where the back wall goes and what will be on it. I had to create two back walls since I want to have room for an elevator shaft at the back, but I don't want it to stick out of the actual back of the base. So I scooted this wall forward 4 studs to fit the elevator. Before I get to work on those, I need to add the walkway. It's just a continuation of what you all saw in the last update, and I'm really liking how it looks so far. I was thinking about maybe adding some jail cells to this other side of the base, but I'm not sure if it would make sense to be holding prisoners in a repair base. Plus, I've seen a lot of people asking for the Han and Solo Chewie fight scene in the underground jail, so I might just include that instead. I got the elevators in position, and now I'm going to build the rest of the back wall around them, which got me thinking about something that I haven't really addressed yet. What am I going to do with all these plain gray walls to make them more interesting? I know it doesn't need the vibrance of a McDonald's play place, but I want the interior to be realistic to an Imperial base and have some kind of detail to it. I'm going to have one of the elevators be open so you can see inside and what it looks like. I used some quarter cylinder bricks to get the shape, then just tiled off the interior and added a door frame around the opening. The other will be even easier since it's just a wall of sand blue brick as the doors are closed. Now I can add the guardrails and tile off the walkway. I was going to add lights to the inside of the elevator, but considering how small it is, I'm not sure if that's an option. Plus, it's at the back of the mock, so when it's finished and fully furnished, I don't know how easy it'll be to see the back. We all know the Empire is all about cleanliness and order, so I'm going to build a little custodial cart to keep the base nice and shiny. It needs smaller wheels so it can wheel around the walkway easier, but I don't have the right parts, so for now it's going to have to stay on the ground floor. Last week I had y'all vote on which exterior panel option I should go with, and the resounding answer was this one, which is good because that's the one I wanted to use. So I'm going to remodel this other option. I would still like to incorporate lights into the panel somehow, but not sure how I'm going to do that, so I'm just going to stick with what I've got here for now. It's going to be nice to have both panels match so I can better see what the outside of the base is going to look like, and I also need to fill in the middle of the support since I'm not going with the tile detailing anymore. I noticed there was space under each dark bluish gray strip for a cheese slope, so I added some dark bluish gray ones to make it look like they are now pillars coming up from the ground. Now that I know these panels are in to stay, I can cover the gap between them and the ground with plate and slope. I also added some canisters and sprinkled a few other colors in there. I'm keeping this area mostly reddish brown, however, since this part of Mimban has been packed down and left mostly undisturbed, so the subterranean dark orange and medium nougat dirt hasn't been flung around as much by shovels or explosions. I'm going to do some more work on the floor of the base as well. I need to add some more cheese slopes to create that hazard strip since the base is raised up from the ground and we don't want anybody tripping on their way in. Also going to add some yellow highlights to the floor, and then after that just start tiling off the rest of the base. I feel like I should have a more complex marking system or designation system going in here because it's, some kind of military base, but I'm just not really sure what to do, and I don't want to get too hung up on it and spend all this time deliberating for the floor because at the end of the day it is just a floor. This week has been much better in regards to progress on the base. I've been doing a lot less thinking and procrastinating and have been very motivated to build. Now that I have a better idea of what I want the base to look like. The back wall looks alright, I guess. I just feel like it's kind of bland right now, but I'm not really sure what to add to spice it up. I thought about maybe adding a third elevator to take up more space and add some detail to the empty middle, but felt like 2 was enough and a third one would feel out of place since right now there's 1 elevator for going up and then 1 for going down. I even added the little control panel so Astromechs can hack in and mess around. The pipes and vent break up the empty middle well enough for now, although I do need some ideas for what kind of stuff I should add to the interior walls since right now all I have on the bottom floor is a puke stain from someone learning where their green milk comes from. So let me know in the comments what I should add to the walls to give them some more detail and realism. The exterior looks even better now that the panels match, although I did mess up and make the gray strips on this panel shorter than the other one, but honestly I kind of like it. Can't explain why, but I think I'll just leave it for now. I added a little power generator to the side and I'm really happy with the idea to add cheese slopes under these strips. It makes the base look even more connected to the ground and like these pillars are actually doing some kind of supporting. The top of the wall is very narrow, only 1 stud wide, which might cause some problems down the road when I'm trying to add a roof, but I won't know for sure until I get there. I don't have much experience with military bases, so I don't really know what designs or markings to add into the floor. I have worked in warehouses and factories and yellow lines and guardrails are used to mark off areas and designate paths, so I felt like making a little yellow one leading to the maintenance bay looks good and breaks up the gray of the floor, but I'd still like to add more to the ground, especially on the other half of the base. So if you have any ideas, let me know. I was surprised with how much better the terrain looks just by adding some tile. I was skeptical of this idea at first because I was happy with how the terrain was looking. All the studs made it look like the ground was very churned up. I had plenty of spots to place minifigs and adding tile would be a lot more work and potentially a lot more money. I left a chunk of the terrain untiled so you could see the difference between the 2 styles and it's clear which one's better. I still have that messed up battle churned look with the tile. It looks even more realistic and I still have plenty of studs for minifigs. It adds a sense of muddiness as well, almost like there's a thin layer of watery mud covering the ground. I'm not sure if I'm going to cover the entire terrain with tile just because of how much I would need to buy, but I will definitely be doing more muddy patches like this throughout the battlefield. Nobody likes slogging around in the mud, especially when people are shooting at you, so I think it's about time I built the ultimate off-roading machine for the troops to mud around in, an Imperial Juggernaut. This has been a topic of speculation and consideration, both on my part and yours, namely because there are a couple different options to choose from. First option is the A9.2 Juggernaut transport, famously seen in the Mandalorian TV show on the planet Morak. They were used to transport crates of highly explosive rhydonium to the Imperial refinery. This is the option many people have requested, and it's a cool looking vehicle but has a couple problems. First is it's much smaller than the original Juggernaut design and just doesn't look as impressive or imposing, and the second problem is much bigger. It's unarmed, making it pretty useless in a fight. And the Mimban rebels have been putting up quite the resistance, so I'm gonna need something that packs some serious firepower and isn't just a transport, which is where option number 2 comes in. The A9 Imperial Juggernaut. It's the successor to the Republic A6 Juggernaut we all know and love. Seen in Rogue One and the Bad Batch Season 3, it's basically a slightly smaller, faster version of the Republic tank, which further makes it the best option for me since I recently built a large clone turbo tank designed by the LEGO Wolfpack, which I can easily modify to make it Team Darkside. I need to swap out any dark red Republic colors for dark bluish gray, and an interesting thing I noticed was that there are multiple reference pics of the A9 Juggernaut with red windshields. Granted, this particular one is fan art, but I still think it's a really cool idea and will further distinguish this from the Republic version. I popped out all the black windscreen pieces and replaced them with menacing red parts. It was a little tricky and I need to order in a couple 1x1 red brackets to completely finish the job, but I was able to get the entire rear cockpit switched out. The reason I didn't replace the dark red with light bluish gray to match the rest of the hull is because I think the dark bluish gray parts will add a nice little highlight to the sides of the tank. Because Mimban is pretty dark, this turbo tank is going to have a light bar attached to the front cockpit to help illuminate the road ahead and any potential obstacles or ambushes waiting out in the desolate wastelands. And you know there are probably all kinds of vehicle enthusiasts in the Imperial Army who couldn't wait to get their hands on one of these tanks and do all kinds of cool mods and add-ons. Let me know in the comments if you have any other add-ons you'd like to see me include. I put 2 sets of heavy repeating blasters on the front for some non-missile front-facing weapons since the Juggernaut is mostly going up against infantry who are low to the ground, which the roof-mounted cannons might not be able to hit as easily. The back was much easier to replace and I didn't even need to remove the panels. If you want to see the more in-depth building process, price, and other cool features of this tank, check out my Turbo Tank building challenge. I'll link it at the top of the video. Lastly, I swapped out the white lights for yellow ones to match the light bar, and this thing is ready for some serious off-road races. Now that I have a handle on the base and have the turbo tank built, I can start to lay out the rest of the Imperial compound. I want to add a landing pad off in this corner, but I don't want to go my typical route of just tiling off a section of the ground and maybe adding some lights. I really really want to go all out and build some kind of structure that raises the platform off the ground. Something similar to the iconic landing pad on Endor. I built a microscale version here, and I think a scaled down version of this would look pretty cool. I had an idea for the support pillars, which uses these macaroni bricks. I tiled off the top and stacked some on top of a round plate, and then plot twist, I flipped the whole thing upside down. This allows me to use these large molded roof pieces upside down to create an inverted cone. To make sure they don't tip over, I'm laying out where I want the landing pad to go and placing 2x2 round bricks as anchors. I can stick them on the round brick, which will keep them from tipping over. Now I can just place whatever kind of landing pad I want on top, and you can't even tell these pillars are upside down. I don't have any more of those big molded pieces, so this is as much building as I'm going to do for the week. But I now have a foundation to build off of, and I don't have to keep wondering what the landing pad's going to look like. I had to flip the landing pad so it's parallel to the base so the turbo tank has enough space to drive between the two without doing some impromptu demolition. The pad will be a little on the small side, but I kind of like that. This isn't a common landing pad for TIE fighters or transports, but one reserved for high-ranking officials and other important people who don't want to slog around Mimban trying to get to HQ while getting their robes muddy. So it doesn't need to be super big. I love how the Imperial Juggernaut looks. I knew I wouldn't need to make any major changes to the body, so I wasn't expecting it to look that different, but the light bar and new windshields provide a bold new look. I also realized now that this is an Imperial Juggernaut, it's even closer to minifig scale. Since the Imperial version was smaller than the Republic Juggernauts, and in this pic, the trooper is almost half the height of the wheel, and that's about as high as a minifig reaches with this model.
It's been a while since I had a video flow this smoothly, both in the building, filming, and editing. It was a really nice break from the real bumpy ride I've had on YouTube over the last few weeks, and helped get me real excited for Mimban again. I made a lot of progress in this update, and that turbo tank is just the cherry on top. Next episode, I want to explore some potential animal builds and figure out what terrain and structures are going to go on the other side of the Imperial compound. That's a wrap for this video. Thank you all so much for liking, commenting, watching this video. Don't forget to let me know what you think of Mimban down below in the comments, and until next time, happy building.